gunfights, outlaws, gunslingers. The Wild West is packed with American legends. The daring tales of cowboys and lawmen have become the stuff of myths, with their deaths often as dramatic as their lives. These infamous figures didn't just fade away. Their passings became part of the gritty, raw truth of Wild West history. And in the end, despite their larger-than-life reputations, many fell to the brutal realities of life on the frontier. In this video, we'll reveal the shocking and tragic fates of 10 historical gunslingers from the Wild West. Number 1. Belle Starr. Belle Starr, often more connected to outlaws than a criminal herself, was once convicted for horse theft and spent 9 months in jail. After that, no other charges stuck. However, she surrounded herself with bandits and shady characters, even marrying twice, both husbands meeting violent ends in shootouts. Her years spent among dangerous company finally caught up with her. One day, while heading home, Belle was shot twice in the back. Who fired those deadly shots remains unknown, and whispers of her mysterious death linger. In one version of the story, it's said that her own son, Ed, may have been involved in her tragic end. Number 2. Wild Bill Hickok. Wild Bill Hickok was one of the most legendary figures of the Old West, known for his unmatched skills with a gun and his courageous, daring personality. Before becoming a famous lawman and gunslinger, Hickok had worked as a scout, soldier, and even a wagon train driver. His sharp shooting and fearless attitude earned him a reputation that spread far and wide. However, his end came tragically in Deadwood, South Dakota in 1876. While sitting in a saloon playing poker, Hickok was shot in the back of the head by Jack McCall, a man with a grudge. Hickok was holding a pair of aces and eights, which would become famously known as the Dead Man's Hand. His death marked the end of an era for the Wild West, cementing his place as a tragic icon in history. Number 3. Jesse James. Jesse James, the infamous outlaw, had long caught the eye of Missouri's governor, Thomas Crittenden. Determined to bring down the skilled thief, Crittenden made it his mission to capture Jesse. After a failed bank robbery, Jesse and his brother Frank went into hiding. But while Jesse's outlaw life continued, Frank began to seek redemption, distancing himself from the gang and trying to live an honest life. This shift in loyalties pushed Jesse to recruit new, less committed members, and soon, the Ford brothers entered the picture. Charlie, the older brother, had already joined Jesse's gang, and Bob followed soon after. When Bob learned of Crittenden's $10,000 reward for Jesse's capture, he saw an opportunity to cash in. Bob convinced Charlie to betray Jesse, and they made a deal with the governor for the reward and a pardon. Months passed, and the Ford brothers lived under Jesse's roof. One day, as Jesse stood on a chair, casually dusting a picture, he removed his coat and holsters. In that moment of vulnerability, Bob seized the chance, shooting Jesse in the back of the head, a betrayal that would echo through history. Before we jump to the next gunslinger, hit that like button and subscribe for more Wild West tales. Number 4. Butch Cassidy. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid are names that bring to mind the famous Hollywood portrayal by Paul Newman and Robert Redford. But the real men led lives just as captivating. Cassidy's gang, the Wild Bunch, made a habit of escaping with $35,000 per robbery, and their ability to stay ahead of the law was legendary. Butch's meticulous planning made them nearly impossible to catch. After years of successful heists, Butch and the Sundance Kid chose to leave the life of crime behind and move to South America, hoping for a fresh start. They kept a low profile for a time, but eventually they were drawn into another robbery, this time stealing a payroll in Bolivia. The Bolivian cavalry surrounded their hideout, and a fierce gunfight ensued. By nightfall, 2 shots rang out. When the dust settled, both men lay dead. The Sundance Kid had a bullet right between his eyes, and Butch Cassidy had taken his own life with a shot to his temple. The mystery surrounding their deaths remains unresolved. Some accounts claim Cassidy lived for years after, keeping the legend of these 2 outlaws alive long after their supposed demise. Number 5. Tom Horn. Tom Horn was a scout, cowboy, and notorious hired gun during the late 1800s. His role in the Old West was marked by his brutal work as a lawman and bounty hunter, tracking down outlaws and troublemakers with ruthless efficiency. Horn gained a fearsome reputation for his ability to track people across the rugged landscape, and his services were in high demand. However, his life took a dark turn when he was accused of murdering a young boy in 1901, an act he claimed he did not commit. Despite his denials, Horn was convicted and sentenced to death by hanging. On November 20th, 1903, he was executed, his life ending in a quiet, tragic manner. His death remains controversial, as some still believe he was innocent, adding another layer to the mystery surrounding his legacy. Number 6. Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid, or That Kid as they called him, was notorious for his wild ways. By the age of 18, he had already killed 17 men, yet he was still free, evading capture. But in 1881, Sheriff Pat Garrett finally caught up with him, hauling the young outlaw in for trial. Billy was found guilty of his crimes and sentenced to hang. But just before his date with the gallows, Billy managed to escape, leaving 2 guards dead in his wake. Sheriff Garrett, relentless as ever, spent 3 months hunting Billy down, following any whisper of his whereabouts. Finally, a lead took him to Maxwell Ranch in New Mexico. One night, Garrett quietly slipped into the shadows of Billy's room, waiting for the right moment. When Billy entered, Garrett took his shot, ending the outlaw's reign. But even in death, Billy's story continued to spark wild rumors. Some wondered if it was really him who had died that night, or if another young man, possibly resembling Buffalo Bill Cody, had met his end. Years later, 2 men would claim to be Billy the Kid, but their stories never held up under scrutiny. Number 7. Buffalo Bill Cody. Buffalo Bill Cody was a legend in his own time, famous for his traveling show, Buffalo Bill's Wild West, which brought the story of the frontier to audiences far and wide. His name became synonymous with the Wild West, and his influence stretched across the nation. But on January 10, 1917, Cody's life came to an end in Denver, where he succumbed to kidney failure while visiting his sister. His death would prove as dramatic as his life, especially because of his final wish. Cody's will specified that he wanted to be buried on the peak of Lookout Mountain in Colorado, where the view would capture the essence of his legendary career. But nature had other plans. A heavy blanket of snow blocked the path up the mountain, making it impassable during the cold winter months. In an effort to honor his request, the funeral home kept his body in cold storage for 6 months, embalming it multiple times. A debate swirled about whether Cody should be buried in Cody, Wyoming, the town he founded, or on Lookout Mountain. Eventually, it was decided his resting place would be on the mountain, though rumors persist that his body might have been moved to Wyoming. Ironically, the very spot where his body lay for half a year has since become a restaurant named Linger, forever tying the place to his memory. Number 8. Calamity Jane. Calamity Jane was a woman who defied the typical boundaries of her time. Known for her wild ways, she often disguised herself as a man, working for the Pony Express and possibly even engaging in more dubious trades to survive. She later became part of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, where her sharpshooting skills earned her fame. As her reputation grew, so did her love for strong drinks and wild nights, leading to a battle with alcoholism that would define much of her life. For years, she struggled with the bottle, and at 51, her life came to an end. In a twist of irony, she was buried next to her old companion, Wild Bill Hickok, her former drinking buddy. Despite rumors that Hickok had little interest in her, she was laid to rest beside him, perhaps a final act of defiance and a fitting end to her tumultuous life. Number 9. Bat Masterson. Bat Masterson's early years were shaped by gunfights and chaos, but he later turned his life around to become a sheriff. After meeting Wyatt Earp, the legendary lawman convinced Masterson that he had the right qualities to help bring order to the wild streets of Dodge City, Kansas. With his 2 brothers already working as lawmen nearby, Masterson agreed to take on the role. His time as sheriff was filled with both triumph and tragedy, most notably the heart-wrenching loss of his brother Ed, who was shot down in the line of duty. As he grew older, Masterson began to tire of the constant violence and instability of the frontier. At 49, he decided to leave the Wild West behind and sought a quieter life with his wife in New York City. There, he worked as a newspaper correspondent and even served as a U.S. Marshal for a while. But in 1921, while sitting at his desk writing, Bat Masterson's life came to a sudden end from a heart attack, far from the gunfights of his youth, but still a tragic, close to a legendary story. Number 10. Annie Oakley. Annie Oakley, the sharpshooting legend, captured the imagination of countless young girls across the nation. Before she became the renowned shooting star of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, she was Annie Mosey, a 16-year-old girl with an extraordinary talent for shooting. Her story began during a visit to her sister's home, where the local innkeeper set up a trap shooting contest against the skilled Frank Butler. The challenge was to hit the most birds out of a set of 25, and while Frank hit 24, Annie nailed all 25. Impressed by her skill, Frank was soon captivated by her, and the two quickly became husband and wife. Together, they enjoyed nearly 50 years of marriage, traveling and performing across the country. However, Annie's health began to decline, and she passed away from anemia. Frank's death came only 18 days later, and though the cause remains unclear, many believe he died of a broken heart, unable to live without his beloved Annie. The two were buried side by side in the Oakley family burial ground, forever united in both life and death. And that's it on these tragic Wild West tales. If you enjoyed these stories, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more legends from the Old West. Thanks for watching.